Welcome back to episode 11 of the Self-Started show. And today we have a special guest, Taylor Baldwin, a law student at Franklin Pierce of Law in New Hampshire. How's it going, Taylor?
It is going very well, Alex. How you guys doing?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Good, man. We're glad to have you on the show. Um, so, for anyone who doesn't know, this is our first interview with someone that neither Alex or I are familiar with. So, we actually want to start the interview with hearing about you, Taylor. Like, where are you from? What's your background?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. So I am born and raised from Long Island, New York. I grew up there,
nice.
spent all my life there. I went to college there. I went to Stony Brook University for undergrad.
Hmm.
Um, so this is how Alex and I sort of found each other. Calvin Lee is a mutual friend of ours, and Calvin went to my high school and then to Stony Brook with me.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. I thought you
Yeah,
guys
yeah.
just knew each other from like Smash Club or something like that.
No, yeah, we're
Yeah, that's
OGs, man.
awesome, dude.
Yeah, so that's where I'm from, and then up until very recently, that's entirely where I was from, and then now I'm of course in New Hampshire for grad school.
Of course, yeah. So I guess kind of what got you into law? Law school is like a big commitment, almost as big as, or just as big as, pursuing medicine.
Right,
So
right.
kind of maybe what inspired you to pursue this?
Yeah, yeah. So sort of my idealized version of what I wanted to do when I was in coming into high school, like ninth grade, was that I wanted to get into some sort of profession could that was about like deducing things through argumentation and through like expert analysis, quote unquote, sort of
Mm,
that sort of thing. And the thing that sort of fit that bill the most was law school. So coming out of high school, that's what I set my sights on and what I geared myself towards throughout undergrad.
oh, cool.
Interesting, interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Would you say that you enjoy? So to me, it sounds like to be someone who's interested in that, you're kind of like an outgoing person who enjoys the confrontational elements of it. Because otherwise, I can't imagine someone who hates talking to other people and arguing really gets into being a lawyer. Is that
Right,
is that true
right.
for you?
In parts. So just as a little bit of background, in law, you don't have to like go and argue a case before a court, for instance. Like
Mhm.
you can spend your entire law career writing contracts between businesses or
Mhm.
Hmm.
handling like arbitration between businesses or writing up patents and stuff like that. So you don't have to be in a courtroom 24/7, but you
Hmm.
do have to be interacting with your client base 24/7. Like that's something you can't avoid, and that
Mhm.
element of interacting with people is always going to be there. So to answer your question, I, I sort of grew into it. I was very introverted at first, but the more I guess just got exposed to different people and different ways of thinking in undergrad, I got more extroverted aspects and more extroverted attributes. So I do enjoy it now, and it's something that I really like about the field.
Cool. So there's a lot of different types of law. So what law are you specifically pursuing, or is it more general and then specific later on?
Yeah, so right now, I'm looking to go into intellectual property, which
Okay.
I'll be going
Mhm.
into, or quote unquote, I'll be ideally going into copyrights and trademarks and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, is that something that you chose recently, or is that something that you kind of uh, had your mindset on during undergrad?
I definitely it was what I had my mindset on. For I think for most of the time I've been interested in law school. Actually, I'm my other big passion in life is being a musician.
Hmm.
So I wanted to do something. I didn't want to go into music because my long story short, my father is a musician, and I see how little money musicians make in the industry nowadays,
Hmm.
Hmm.
and they have to put in so much work to make that little money, and that's just not something I really wanted to be about. But I still wanted to do something
I don't
that,
blame you, dude. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I still wanted to do something that had creativity at its forefront, which is why I wanted to go into like the intellectual property side of law.
Interesting. Yeah, that sounds like a really good fit if you're thinking about it from the aspect of copyright and how it affects the music industry. Like I see that interrelation there. So
Yeah,
it
totally.
makes sense. It makes sense why you'd go down that path. Now, is the uh, so from the process of going from pre-law to now you're in law school, is
Mhm.
it similar to how the pre-med track is for medical students, where they have their pre-med classes and then they have their like MCAT test and then they go for their X amount of years of medical school and then they specialize? Can you just explain for the audience what the typical track might look like for a lawyer? Um,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, for sure. So there's actually a pretty big difference between pre-med and pre-law, which is that there isn't really a pre-law track, quote unquote. You don't have
Mhm.
to major in one particular field or take any particular courses during undergrad. You can just sort of do whatever you want. And then if you get a good, take your LSAT, which is the law school version of the MCAT, and then you're off to the races.
Mhm.
Um, but the rest is pretty similar because you still have to study for a big standardized test, and you're still spending, I'm not sure what it is for med school, but it's 3 years for law school to get your JD.
Oh, okay.
oh,
Yeah, yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
So I guess what is exactly tested on the LSAT? Because I'm not really familiar with the field of law at all.
Mhm.
Do you need to know like the general specifics of law? Is there the kind of same way where people are ranked on different sections of the test? Or and in addition with that, when applying to law schools, kind of what do universities really look out for when they're actually accepting people?
Yeah, for sure. So the LSAT structure is there's three main sections and then an essay that you have to write, which isn't graded, but it's still like the people reviewing the LSAT still take notice of it and still factor it into their, I guess, opinion of you, if that makes sense. And so
Hmm.
the three sections are a reading comprehension section, a argumentative reasoning section, and then a section on what they call logic games. But I think they changed the name of that section recently. So for those of
Is
you
that
at home,
like
if you go
brain
ahead, go
teasers kind of deal?
ahead. It's like brain teasers on steroids.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's like so they'll give you certain facts and like certain fact patterns, and you have to like deduce the most abstract conclusions from them. Like you have to spend like 10 minutes per question just like figuring out if like what the right conclusion is because they'll give you obviously since it's multiple choice 4 or 5 different possible options for like a particular question and you have to figure out which one is right.
I see. I
Yeah,
see.
yeah.
Oh, interesting. Um, actually, on that note, what would be like an example of like an question in the argumentation section?
Yeah, so for that one it'll be something like they'll in the abstract they'll give you um a person in a particular field. It varies, like they included a bunch of different fields in the fact patterns, but then they'll be like this person says X, like they'll say like this governor of the state says that this tax bracket idea wouldn't be a good idea for X reasons. Which of the
Hmm.
following is a logical conclusion that you can make from his reasoning? Or which of the following is a presupposition of his reasoning? Stuff like that.
Wait, that's super
Interesting.
interesting.
That's very
Like,
interesting, actually.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
like all basically it's kind of uh a standardized way of thinking. And so you're not just memorizing facts, but you're kind of you need to find the right conclusion that makes the most sense for
Yeah, yeah. So
yeah.
it's like the LSAT is the way that I sort of conceptualized it is that the LSAT is gearing you towards how you should be thinking as a lawyer, but not
Hmm.
necessarily what you should be thinking about.
Hmm.
Interesting. So, would you say the field of law? I mean, this answer might vary based on which sub bracket of law we're talking about. But
Mm.
would you say in general this is more of a science than an art?
Ooh, that is a good ass question. I It's tough to say because there is so much creative energy that goes into it. Um, because although it might not seem so on the surface, being able to um, like think your way out of a like a fact pattern in
Mm,
real life, like if a client gives you X facts and they're not particularly conducive to winning the case, you have to invest creative energy in making that fact pattern work for you. Um, so there is a great deal of, I don't want to say artistic freedom, but like the same type of creative energy that goes into making a work of art is
hmm
found in what lawyers do. So it definitely is, it's sort of a hybrid, I would say,
hmm
is the best way to describe it. Because there are some like scientific-esque things you need to be worried about in terms of more just like straight up academics, like you need to know certain laws, stuff like that.
hmm
But there is a great deal of creativity as well.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think I never really got the breakdown of what law is like that.
Yeah, yeah.
I think Alex, I don't know about you, but for me, the perception of law has always been like those super dramatic court cases, and like people are just like,
Yeah,
"Oh, my
yeah,
client is not guilty, Your Honor. I'm being totally framed." Uh,
yeah.
so
When I
it's
think of
really like hyped, but this is like a really interesting way to to really dive into what it actually is and what it takes.
Yeah, totally. It's like there's so much that goes on behind the scenes, you know?
Yeah, when I think of law, I think of like Suits or Judge Judy, and and kind of people are really just spitting facts and doing a lot of research and then kind of just like throwing people under the table like underhandedly. But I think that's more for TV's sake.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and there's
Yeah.
probably a lot more. One, it's probably more civil, but also um, there's probably a lot more that really goes on behind the scenes, as you said.
Hmm.
Yeah, actually, on that note, Taylor, what's your thoughts on the perception of the legal industry in like media versus what it actually is?
Yeah, yeah. Well, the biggest perception versus reality sort of thing is sort of what Alex was saying. Like there's this idea that there's a lot of like throwing people under the bus and a lot of, oh, we're going to do everything we can to make sure our client wins. And
Yeah.
uh definitely in New Hampshire, but elsewhere as well, that's not really the case. New Hampshire in particular, it's like the bar is very small, so everybody knows each other. So if you're a
hmm
jerk to
Mm.
somebody, they're all just gonna ostracize you, like you're done.
Oh,
Um, um, but yeah, and so a lot of actually what lawyers do in their free time is like community service and charitable works, or like taking low income clients for like an incredibly low price, or for just doing it for them for free.
hmm
Um,
Mhm.
because so many lawyers are trying to push back against that narrative.
Yeah, that must be tough because it's like it seems just like everyone just thinks that like lawyers are just evil people and like they'll do whatever it takes to get that paycheck
Yeah, yeah.
and yeah, I get it must be tough because there's just no chance that all of them, even if there are a few bad apples, like there's no way everyone is just like out to get you.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Definitely sensationalized.
Hmm.
So I guess coming back to like what I asked before was, so what happens when like the process of applying to a law school? Are there looking for like extracurriculars? If you
Right,
did something, did you do extracurriculars? Of course, there's the LSAT score.
right.
What else goes into that decision?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. I totally forgot about
No,
that
no, you're
aspect
good,
of it.
man. Yeah.
So the biggest thing, and it's biggest in the sense that they weight it more heavily than the other aspects of your resume and your undergrad career, is the LSAT score.
Hmm.
Um, so that matters more to uh the what's it called the people looking at your transcript than your GPA or your resume.
I see.
But that being said, having a good GPA helps, and what also really helps. This is the other big thing that you have to submit when you apply to law school is your personal statement. So the law school will ask you like, what brings you to UNH Franklin Pierce School of Law, and you have to give like an insight into your life sort of to them. And those are like the three things that matter the most. It's like your LSAT score, your GPA, and your personal statement.
I see.
Interesting. Um, just going back to the what you said about how there's not exactly a pre-law track.
Mm-hmm.
Are there certain classes that are recommended for those interested in law, like maybe like political science or something like that, where
Yeah,
it
yeah.
helps your chances versus like if you have like a completely unrelated degree, like let's say you have like a bio degree, you want to do law, like is there like I'm sure there's some sort of hierarchy of better, more conducive to law classes or majors.
Right, right. Yeah, so the number one class this is the only class I think you should in sort of a normative sense take, and that's definitely take a writing class because being able to write well, like naturally it's gonna send you for miles in law school. Like that's gonna be your biggest asset.
Mm-hmm.
Um excuse me. But then other than that, I would say the hierarchy just goes in sort of like a binary where it's like you want to take classes that are making you think critically or think analytically. So
Mhm.
like political science is good. Um, English is actually pretty good. Like taking philosophy classes is also pretty good in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and actually, funny enough, there's also so to be a patent lawyer, you have to major in a hard science in undergrad. That's the only
Interesting.
sort of track that you have to be on for a particular field of law. And the reason is that they want patent lawyers to be familiar with like scientific processes and inventing, because that's what they're going to be dealing with the entire time that they're working there.
That
I
makes sense.
see.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
makes sense. You want to be knowledgeable of kind of the what your client's work is.
right, right. And
Yeah.
especially since because patent law, like, it's not just like having a layman's perception of what inventing is like. It's the specific nitty gritty, like how do these like processes work.
Yeah, it has to be different or like everyone has it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. Yeah. Um, cool. So what's like a typical day look like for you now as a student in law school, and how is that different from like your undergrad experience?
Yeah, yeah. So my initial days as a law student for like the first month and a half were pretty rough because I
Mm-hmm.
just wasn't adjusted to the workload, like, because workload yet, because you have to read a lot of cases.
Hmm.
So initially the average day was like I'd go wake up at like 9 a.m., go to classes, and you don't have very many classes, but they are all like an hour and a half to 2 hours long.
Mm-hmm.
um, so then I would head home and start doing homework, and then by the time I was finished with homework it would be like 10 p.m., 11 p.m., so I just go to bed.
Do it all
um,
over again.
Yeah, exactly. But now that like I'm getting adjusted to the workload, it's a lot different. I'm not spending as much time. I'm not struggling through the cases, I should say. Um,
Hmm.
and so now on average, it's more like, I don't know, spending maybe about 3 to 4 hours on homework after you get home from classes.
Gotcha. So is this 5 days a week, or how many classes are you taking in that in a
Yeah,
semester?
yeah, it varies from semester to semester, and I'd imagine from law school to law school as well. But for
Hmm.
me,
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking 6 classes, so 5 days a week. I
That's a
have
lot.
basic.
Oh
Yeah, it's a
wow.
decent amount. It's a decent amount.
Is that typical?
I think so. I'm not too certain because again, I don't know really how other law
Hmm.
schools do it, but
Mm-hmm.
I think it's typical because all of the classes I'm taking are like the general sort of law classes that you take in your first year. So I'd imagine other law schools do it this way.
I
Gotcha.
see.
Gotcha.
And
Gotcha.
is it after probably like 1 or 2 years, you would be more focused in on copyright law? Is that kind of the right idea?
Yeah, yeah. So after your first year,
Mm-hmm.
starting in your summer vacation and then all going onward, it's very much geared towards hands-on experience, whether that's like an internship or
Oh,
getting a job
interesting.
somewhere. Yeah.
So you would be shadowing like a lawyer that is in the field that you want to be in?
Yeah, ideally. A lot of people, just the way that things work out, you might not ideally get that the position that you want that's most conducive to what you want to do. But I'd be shadowing somebody. So if it's not an intellectual property lawyer, it would be like a judge somewhere or shadowing someone else at like a different type of law firm.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So after you said that you're on basically like a 3-year timeline at
Yeah.
your current school, right? So
Mhm.
is there further schooling after that, or once you're out of what was the name of this place?
Franklin
Franklin
Pierce.
Yeah,
Pierce.
Franklin Pierce.
Yeah.
Is that kind of the end of your road, and that's when you start being like a full-time lawyer?
Yeah, it depends on what you want to do because you can also, me personally, I will be done with education as far as I can tell after the 3 years.
Mm.
I'll be moving
Get me
on
out of
to
here.
yeah, exactly. Um, but you can also like you can get a PhD in law, which I'm not entirely sure what that process is like in terms of how many years after the initial 3 you have to do, but it's an option. You can also do I think another 2 year program where you get what's called an LLM, which is where you can practice in like certain foreign countries without having to take their bar exam.
Oh,
Uh,
that's cool.
yeah. There's like different options you can do.
Oh, actually, speaking of the bar exam, where does that exam take place in your personal timeline?
And kind of
It
what
takes
does
place.
that
Yeah,
consist of also, out of
it takes
curiosity?
place at the end of the 3 years.
Mhm.
And it consists of we're starting review for the bar exam this semester, like in the middle of it. So I'm not entirely sure the specifics, but I know generally they ask about. I think they just ask questions basically about all the different types of law you learn in your law school career. So they'll ask questions on like torts, on criminal procedure, on civil procedure, on contracts, on property, like et cetera, et cetera. Like they just ask about
Mm.
everything.
I see.
Gotcha. All
And
right.
the bar is individual to each state, right? So would they ask you kind of different, because obviously law is different from state to state, I guess.
Right.
Do you need to like know specific state laws versus other state laws depending on where you want to practice?
It depends on the state. So most states have I think it's called the unified bar exam, where
Okay,
it's like transferable from state to state. So if I pass the bar in New Hampshire, I can probably practice law in Vermont, for instance.
I
Um,
see.
but there are because like you're saying, some states are just so drastically different. Like there's other states where you'll have to retake the bar just because it's so different. Like California, New
Hmm.
York, Delaware, and Louisiana are like the four big ones where law is just so different in those states that you have to retake the bar exam.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And so and before we go into like your future plans beyond your graduates law school,
Hmm.
I want to take it back to your undergrad experience, and because you said that you weren't ready for the workload of law school in the first couple of months. What was your workload like in undergrad, and what type of classes were you taking, since there weren't exactly a set pre-law track?
Right. So in undergrad, I forget if I mentioned this or not, but I was a political science major with a music theory minor.
Mm.
Um,
Hmm.
so my workload was mostly reading. I guess it was mostly just reading like academic studies from political science journals.
Mm.
Um, and if it wasn't that, it was reading something from a textbook that was for the class. Um, which is not to say that those things don't have any depth to them or aren't hard to understand, but they like the average political science article is maybe at most 10 pages, and the average like law school case feels like it's at least 10 pages.
Mm.
So it's just upping how much you have to read, and
Mm.
it's upping how difficult what you have to read is, because now suddenly each judge is going to have their own personal way that they write, and each time period of U.S. law is going to have its different way of writing a case brief. So,
Mm.
and on top of that, it's using legal jargon that you're not entirely familiar with yet. So it's just you have to read more pages, and the material you're reading is harder, and aren't familiar with the terminology yet.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So beyond your courses, were there any extracurriculars that you did that helped you with getting into law school?
Yeah. So the only two sort of extracurricular activities I did really was, as Alex had mentioned, I was part of the Smash Club, the Stony Brook Super Smash Bros. Club at during undergrad. And then the other one was I'm an avid musician, so I would perform pretty regularly. And I think the latter helped a lot because my personal statement was entirely focused on like, oh well, this school is known for Franklin Pierce is known for being like an intellectual property law school, and that's the field I want to go in. Here's X amount of gigs that I've done that show how invested I am in like creative energy and stuff like that.
Interesting.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah,
good.
that's a
Yeah,
good
that's
way to link it.
Yeah, thank you.
yeah. I mean, it clearly worked.
Yeah, clearly it worked, right? You're
Yeah,
in.
I mean, I am here, so it must
Yeah.
have done something.
That's cool, man. Well, I actually do want to talk about your Smash life.
Yeah, for sure.
Little towards the end. So we'll keep that in mind. But so I think we have a pretty good understanding of your background and what you've gone through in your legal career thus far.
Yeah.
What are your goals for the future? Let's say, I mean, and you might not have this as concretely, so it's okay. But so like for the next 5 years.
Yeah. It's sort of just a general goal right now, which is I just want to be able, after the 3 years at law school's up, to, I guess, settle down, quote unquote, that sort of stereotypical phrase that's thrown out there, but like find some sort of community that I can be a part of while I'm actually working and being in the workforce. Ideally, that would be back on Long Island. That's one of my goals, but that might not be the case. Just things might turn out differently or in a way that's not conducive to being back on Long Island. So we'll see
You'd
what
probably
happens.
have to retake the bar, right? Because if you take it in New Hampshire, you'd have to take it again in
Yeah,
New York.
yeah.
I see.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Or I mean, actually, what you also can do is you don't have to take it in New Hampshire when you're done with law school.
Oh, I see.
So I could just, if I'm dead set on being back in Long Island, I could graduate from law school and then come and take the New York bar.
Oh, cool.
By the way, are you from Nassau or Suffolk?
Suffolk.
Suffolk. Okay.
We're from Nassau, so
Oh, really? Oh, that's
yeah,
funny.
Yeah.
yeah. Actually, I have another question. So, I've known some like lawyers that have gone into private practice, and then I've known lawyers that have gone to work for like a law firm. Could you kind of give more insight into the differences between the two and kind of what more interests you, I guess?
Yeah, it's one of the things I'm sort of in the midst of deciding right now. So I can't really, one's not really swaying my preference at the moment. But
Yeah.
the big difference between the two is that um, when you're in a law firm, you have a lot less autonomy, but a lot more stability. So you can't make your own hours really. There's certain things that you can, change to your preference, but you can't, decide how much you have to work in a certain year or a certain segment of a year.
Yeah.
But you're also not managing your own finances. The law firm is doing that. Whereas when you're working in a private practice, it's the opposite. You have more freedom. You can 100% work at home if that's your prerogative. You can, decide when you want to start working in the day, what time period in the day you want to work, but you're also managing yourself entirely. Um, and that's the whole, I guess the nature of starting your own business or working privately in any industry, but it's no
Yeah.
exception for law school. That's just, that's what it is when you work privately.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that does sound like the typical dichotomy between working at a corporate job versus doing that same job as your own business owner. So that makes a
Right.
lot of sense. All right, Alex, do you have any particular questions that are still pressing?
Um, yeah, like kind of just to tie everything up. I guess one, if for a student that is aspiring to pursue law, any type of law, I guess, would you have any advice for that kind of person, or any kind of warnings before they get themselves into, or what they should expect?
Yeah. So the biggest piece of advice that was given to me in undergrad came from um, a lawyer who also played music and played music with my dad, which is how I met him.
Hmm.
Um, and he told me that don't study any law in undergrad because
Interesting. Wait,
that's what
what?
law school is for. So like you're gonna have trust me and trust everyone else who's been to law school. You'll have plenty of time to study law when you're in law school. As a matter of fact, it's all you'll be doing. So um, when you're in undergrad, what you want to focus on is making your resume and your GPA as good as it possibly can be, because that's what's going to get you into law school. And then eventually, obviously, make your LSAT score as good as it can be. Um, so just focus. My advice, sort of condensed, is just focus on undergrad while you're in undergrad, because when you're in law school, you'll have plenty of time to focus on law school.
I see. Cool.
Gotcha.
I guess on the
Yeah.
flip side of that, are there any like types of people that shouldn't pursue law? You know, like maybe if you're not too inclined to do like a certain task, maybe you shouldn't, or if you're reconsidering out of curiosity.
Mm, mm. Let me think. I think it's probably safe to say, to be a lawyer, you have to like writing, and you
Mhm.
have to, at least in some capacity, like talking to people.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
and I think if you don't have those two traits, one, it's going to be very hard, but two, you're not going to enjoy yourself at all.
Hmm.
So unless you are comfortable making some sort of change where you can like those things, or be more inclined to those things, then I would probably steer clear of law school.
You actually mentioned that you were more of an introverted person, and through your experiences in undergrad, that you screw your way into being that type of person. So,
Right.
can you give us some examples of like maybe not particular moments, but like trends in your undergrad career that enabled you to become more of that person that should be doing law type of person?
Yeah, for sure. It was just, I guess, a combination of meeting new people and being able to talk to new people, like talk to people specifically that were new to me that I had never talked to before. Because then you have to,
Hmm.
you have to
Hmm.
form new bonds and sort of meet them halfway and communicate with them. And
Hmm.
that sort of thing just helped me open up, I guess.
Gotcha. So it sounds like it's
Cool.
more of a result of just like constant exposure to that stimulus and like becoming comfortable with the social interaction aspect of it.
Yeah, totally, exactly.
Gotcha.
Awesome.
Uh, cool, man. Well, before we end, I want to talk about your personal interests with music and Smash most prominently. So, what type of music are you into?
Yeah. So I literally, I know a lot of people say this, but I love literally every type of music imaginable. Um, so when the first, yeah, I guess this was the first sort of performances I did, was for the Metropolitan Youth Orchestra, which is a Long Island and I guess and part of NYC also, youth orchestra, that I started playing with in ninth grade in high school. Um, and that was amazing. They play classical music, since
Mhm.
they're an orchestra, and I played oboe for them, which is a type of woodwind. Um, and it was a really wonderful opportunity. Like I was able to play at different campuses on the island. I played at Carnegie Hall in the city, which was amazing. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, so and then concurrent with that, I also play drums, guitar, and bass. So I had
Oh, wow.
friends. Yeah, yeah. Um, Friends throughout high school who had different musical projects, and they would either need a drummer or a bassist, and so I would play with them, and we play a couple gigs on Long Island every once in a while. Um, Other than that, I just like to listen to a lot of music. I like to write a lot of music. Um,
And are you still like performing and writing music and doing gigs, or you've kind of gotten busy with law school?
Trying to. I'm definitely still
Oh
trying.
yeah, all right, yeah.
Um,
That's good to
I
hear.
actually I just played a house show with a friend who had released an album and was celebrating that, which was
Oh,
that was a lot
cool.
of fun. Yeah.
Do you have like a SoundCloud or a YouTube thing? Maybe we could plug that in as well.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
everybody at home, go and listen to evanfrawley.bandcamp.com. Also listen to skyfrawley.bandcamp.com. I believe he has music
We'll
on both.
we'll, we'll have all the links in the descriptions.
Perfect.
We'll grab them from Taylor.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool.
Yeah, and so then aside from that, as I was talking about, my other big sort of passion is playing video games competitively,
Mhm.
which I've done for a long time now.
Dude, so
And
who's your Smash main?
I play Sheik in Melee.
Sheik. Okay.
You're not about Smash 4, or you just only Melee?
No, I actually, funny enough, I did play Smash 4 competitively when it was out, but now I mostly just play Melee.
I see.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Sheik's not too good in Smash 4, so
Yeah, at least not as good as in Melee.
yeah, definitely. Awesome. Well, I'm good with questions, Mahim. Anything else to close
Well,
up,
I
or?
wanted to say that like it's very apparent that like your passion for music, like I just I could just feel the tangible excitement that you got from just talking about it. So that's like really cool to hear, and like I'm glad that we were able to interview you and get to know you just a little bit better, Taylor.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm totally glad that I was able to come on and do this. This was a ton of fun.
Yeah, no, we're
Awesome.
happy to have you, man. It was like a lot of fun, and I definitely learned a lot of new things that I wasn't really aware of in the field of law.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah, awesome, man. Yeah, we really appreciate it. We hope we can have you on again sometime, and I think yeah, that'd be really cool.
Right on, right on.
Awesome. So thank you, everyone, for that's watching. If you made it this far, if you like this interview and want to see more content like this, smash that like button and sub for similar content in the future. But other than that, this is Alex, and this is Taylor and Mahim, and I guess we'll see you in the next one. Thanks again.
All right, thank you guys. Thank you, Taylor. Take
Of
care.
course. Thank you guys.